Hi, I'm Mike.
And I'm Claire. We're from Manumission.
And you are listening to the House Culture Podcast.
House Culture.
Hello everybody and welcome back to what is now our fourth season of the House Culture Podcast, hosted by me, the managing editor at House Culture, Matt Rouse. I've missed being behind this mic talking to you guys, and oh man, have we got some big guests lined up for your listening pleasure every month. I also want to say a heartfelt welcome to all of the new followers that have joined us whilst we've been off season. We are House Culture, a collective of house music fans who have come together through their mutual love of the beat to celebrate the spirit of house music. Our home is on Instagram at houseculturenet, and if you haven't already, come and follow us on there where you can connect with over 100,000 people from across the planet. I had to get a mention of that milestone in there somewhere. Also, get those digital fingers dusty by digging through our back catalogue of previous podcasts. We've spoken to everyone from legends such as Norman Cook and David Morales, founding fathers such as Danny Rampling and Graham Park, leaders of the new school like Purple Disco Machine and Josh Butler, and important people behind the scenes that make all of our dance music dreams come true, like Pike's Hotel creative director Dawn Hindle and the person widely credited with bringing dance music to Glastonbury, Malcolm Haynes. If you don't recognise the name, have a listen as we make sure all of our guests have a fascinating tale to tell. Now listeners, I hope all of your worlds have recovered from what has been a very turbulent few years. It's certainly been tough, but Clubland is back with a bang, and this summer season is shaping up to be one of the biggest ever, especially on the Isle of Ibiza, and that is where we are kicking off this season of the podcast. As I sat down with a pair of absolute legends from the island, Mike and Claire Manumission. In our chat, you'll hear how they took an already successful UK club night called Manumission to the shores of the White Isle.
We were told that, Ibiza would be maybe a good place to go. Then I managed to go to Coup, and that was spectacular. I was at this club, it's enormous, and it has a swimming pool in it, it's got trees growing in it. Then I said to my brother, imagine we can do Manumission here. And Coup said we could do every week.
How the entire enterprise completely took over their lives.
Manumission was an obsession itself. Everything we did was for Manumission. We were on this massive mission. And money for us was fuel for Manumission.
What they needed to add to take Manumission to a level never previously seen by any other clubbing institution.
Manumission needed the motel. Every stage of getting the motel was impossible.
We were just so determined we were going to have it.
We knew we were going to get it.
And how, for an upcoming book, revisiting the evidence from that notorious Manumission Motel made them feel 25 years later.
We've got this huge old cabinet full of all the photographs and the tapes and everything. So we got the footage out and started playing some of the tapes, and we were like, oh my goodness, we were so shocked. And we were like, okay, I think we should burn them. This is too scandalous.
Now, as you'll also hear, Claire has recently written a memoir called The Motel, High Times in 90s Ibiza, and with the release date still TBC, I hope you can appreciate that we didn't want to spoil all of the stories contained within. However, you'll hear enough in our conversation to take you back to those heady days, as well as prime you for the book's release later this year. This conversation was recorded live and direct from Mike and Claire's mountain hideaway on mainland Spain, and in the company of their menagerie of animals. I think it all adds to the atmosphere of being in the company of two incredible free spirits who have rewritten the rule book on what it is to go clubbing, and, as you'll hear, look set to do it again this year. This is Mike and Claire Manumission.
House Culture.
Hi, Mike and Claire. Welcome to the House Culture Podcast, and thank you so much for sitting down with us today. You two are a pair of Ibiza legends who have not only presided over some of the wildest parties the island has ever seen, you are also landlords of the infamous Manumission Motel. Now, we want to kind of dig into some of that, but we always like to start at the beginning as well. So can you tell us where you grew up and your formative clubbing experiences when you were growing up? One of you wants to go first. It doesn't matter who.
Okay.
You go, Claire.
Okay, so hi, Matt.
Hi.
Hi. I started going to nightclubs when I was 13. Me and my best friend Jackie, she was 5'10", I was 5'7.5" at that age. And we discovered if we kind of got dressed up, we could sneak our way into nightclubs. So we started in local nightclubs in Watford, like Paradise Lost. And then we would jump on the train to London. And so I started started really young. And even before that, I was roller discos, and I grew up in Harrow, and there was a big kind of drinking culture. There was a lot of drugs. It was a lot of street kind of culture. And when I discovered nightclubs, I was just smitten. And then it was literally every weekend in London in clubs. And and then I went to Ibiza when I was...
You must have gone when you were 17.
17, and just for 2 weeks, absolutely adored it. And then the next summer, I went out there, kidnapped my little sister, and literally we went out with 50 quid and slept on park benches, and then got taken in by, the scene was so kind of friendly and open. People gave us one of their beds, and they would top and tail, and me and my sister would top and tail, and just met so many amazing people. And then I ended up living in a squat and
a sea view.
With a beautiful sea view. And then I met Mike, and I never really kind of went back. It just went forward into the Manumission years.
So even leading up to that, what was those formative years in Watford, Harrow, London? What was the scene kind of like during that era? Was it, the community that you were getting into that you loved, or was it the music? What was kind of driving that passion?
So even before that, I loved to dance. So I started ballet, and then I discovered disco dancing, which I just thought was fantastic. And there was a big punk scene in Harrow too in the 80s. So me and my sister used to hang out with all these older punks, and they used to dress us up and stuff. And that was a big part of it for me, was the costume element, the fact that you could transform yourself. I'm actually quite shy, but then if I put on a costume, and dancing is the same, I find I can really express myself when I'm dancing. So nightclubs were the perfect stage to really express yourself and become that, somebody else. Then it was the drugs. So then first it was the alcohol, which, me and my best friend would steal from the cupboards of our parents and mix up these disgraceful cocktails of anything we could find with a tube of toothpaste in one hand and this mixture in the other. And we would just drink it and then squeeze the toothpaste and try and take away the awful. It was just not a good idea. So first it was just trying to get as drunk as possible, and then I think I was I don't know how I was in a club in London, maybe the Milk Bar or somewhere. I can't remember. It was one of those underground clubs in London, and I took some ecstasy when I was, I think, 15, and I saw that the guy standing next to me took his head off of his shoulders and put it on somebody else's head. I'm really sensitive with drugs, so I literally a quarter of an ecstasy, and that would be me, or a dab of speed, and that would be me for the whole night. So then the combination of that and that with the dance music, I was a raver too. I was really into the rave scene. I used to just dance all night and then come home on the night bus, quivering and I still remember the come downs. But and it was really open, the scene, it was really friendly. And then when I got to Ibiza, and then I just found Ibiza was a huge extension of that. And it was it was just the warmth, the sunshine, and just living that lifestyle. Because back in this was in 93 and 94 when I actually went there for the whole summer. it had fallen out of favour with the British. You know, it wasn't popular anymore. 88 had kind of died, come and gone, and so it was really laid back.
Mm-hmm.
It was a really kind of magical time. It was Cafe Del Mar.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Mambo was it was like its first year, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a very relaxed vibe in San Antonio.
Awesome. And you know, you mentioned 94 there as well, and that is, you know, the year that Manumission started in Manchester. Is that right, Mike, as well?
Yeah.
Can you know, tell us about your clubbing life leading up to that point as well? I'm aware that you guys met in Ibiza, right? So just a story of where before the paths crossed. What was your experience in clubland like, Mike?
Well, my experience in clubland, I mean, I'm from a village in Lincolnshire, a small village,
Mm-hmm.
and I always had, you know, most of the people, my friends, didn't really want to leave the village, but I always had a strong desire to live in London.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually I did manage to move to London. Our first clubbing experiences, I suppose, were like obviously the local legends in Sleaford. It was, you know, like they were not like clubs became. I mean, this is where you'd have the talking DJ. You know, the DJ would play a record and he'd talk, and it was kind of a place to go try and pull. Although none of us were very successful, I think, at that back in the day. And then I went to like Venus in Nottingham, which was cool, and that was probably the coolest club near us. Eventually, I did manage to move to London. I went to university, studied architecture, and that time I think it was sort of the beginnings, I suppose, of like the acid house scene things. So I got to go to things like the Mud Club, and I can't remember the name of it, but there was lots of cool stuff going on. It was like something was happening. People were talking about Ibiza. I had no interest in going at all because I didn't take any drugs, and I was like extremely, what would you say?
Health conscious.
I did gymnastics, so it was like I was like, you know. But I loved London, and I loved going to these clubs and parties. Went to a few, and then I had my eyes set on going to live in New York, and so went to New York for a bit. But I couldn't afford to stay. Ended up coming back, and then I lived in Paris for 2 years. And in Paris, I went to some pretty cool parties there. There was a big. I ended up modeling in Paris. So I tried to get a job as a dishwasher in a pizza place, and that didn't work at all. And I ended up becoming a model with Elite, which was amazing. And the booker from Elite took me to this gay club called Boy, which was really cool. Had a great energy. And there was a club called the Bandouche that it was more fashion. You know, I used to go there as well. Then Kinky Galinky in London, I went to a lot. That was good. And then I did finally move to New York, and I went to Nell's, the Tunnel, Limelight. Where did I go to? Club USA. I mean, the New York club scene was fantastic back then. You know, it was like, that was the time of Michael Alley. He had all his club kids, and this is before he'd murdered his drug dealer. So it was like, he was just the cool character. And the club kids were very cool too. And they were kind of out there in a kind of like a sort of, I don't know what you describe them as, kind of colourful raver sort of way. So my kind of club experience, I kind of missed out. I was there at the beginning of the UK stuff with those London things, missed out on Ibiza completely. I was like 5 years between Paris and New York and nipping back to London. And it was more in the gay scene and like the more flamboyant scene that I enjoyed. And particularly because it was like where I grew up, it was the clubs were quite violent. You know, a fight could break out at any moment. And whereas in the gay scene, that never happened. The music was great. The people, you know, were lovely. And then I was finally, when I was evicted from where I was living in New York, I went back to stay with my brother in Manchester. And that was like I think it was probably getting close to December of 93. And then because I'd been raving up about how good the parties were in New York, and my brother told me they were great in Manchester, and I got back and I couldn't really understand it. I was like, well, it's just a DJ and a room full of sweaty people. I said, these are terrible. You know, we could do better than that. And so, and he said, well, why don't we? And so then I said, well, nobody will give us a club. And I probably should save some of the story for the book because it's in the book. But eventually we get a club and have a plan to to revolutionize the club scene, and which we plan to do within 12 weeks. And so we've got our mind is set on getting to the top of the DJ magazine club charts within 12 weeks, which we do. And then because Manumission started in Manchester, was in a small gay club called Equinox and Le Cage. And I suppose I just try to make it incredibly good value. So it's like when we launched, it was £5, but it went from 8 o'clock. It started at 8 p.m. at the Athenaeum. Then we did a street parade to Equinox. Then we went down. We were in Equinox, I think, till 4 in the morning, and then we finished off from La Cage till 6 in the morning for kind of breakfast and more music and whatever. And it was £5, and it worked really, really well. I mean, I don't know what to say there.
I mean, it must have been like you say, it's not necessarily even a club night. It was more a live theatre ongoing experience. I assume there was nothing else going on quite like that in the scene up there at that time. I mean,
you had Vague in Leeds, which was good. And that was kind of like it was sort of a mixed night, not gay, not straight. I don't know if they would call it that, but it was like, kind of accepted. That was a nice night that happened in Leeds. And then there was Flesh, which happened at the Hacienda, which was, I think, what's his name? Paul Con, maybe? No, Paul somebody. Anyway, that was pretty cool, but there wasn't really anything, like you say, there wasn't anything like Manumission, because all of my experience going out had taught me, like, the whole thing of going into a club could be a really nerve-wracking experience, especially the ones that I went to or had been going to in New York or London or Paris. To get into the club you just couldn't get in. You had to look a certain way and act a certain way. And so I was determined that when we did Manumission, it didn't matter how you looked. If you didn't have the right energy, you weren't getting in. So basically, Manumission was always very accepting of everybody. So, and I did the door myself. I did the selecting myself, and to try to have the right atmosphere. So it was, how would I say?
Yeah, I think that kind of flowed through from the very beginning throughout the whole.
Yeah, that's true, because you know how the clubs are very elitist, aren't they? Well, they used to be. So that you'd get to the door, you'd maybe be as nervous as shit. Are they going to let you in at all? And I always felt that bad energy, that mood would go inside with you. Like they might spot that you're not actually supposed to be in here and throw you out at any minute. So you'd have all these people
slightly uncomfortable,
being pretentious, acting a certain way. So I thought, well, if from the door we could be really welcoming and like in the right way, so that everybody, it's like a party in our house, and you're welcomed in, and you come in a very good mood, and you've been entertained. So you're like, if you'd have been on the street parade, there'd have been music playing, and people would have, would get the vibe just right, so that by the time you go in, all of that pretentiousness is not there, and everybody's on their best, kind of the best version of themselves. I suppose that's carried on through. And like looking at it as you are almost casting a film for the night, and you're building that energy, and like you say, everyone's positive when they walk in, rather than having that nervousness, which can be that subconscious underlying emotion, like you say, of tenseness on the night. So the connection from Manchester to Ibiza, how did that evolve, and how did that come about? Okay, well, so what happened? We said there'd never ever be any violence in Manumission. That was it was an important thing for me. And after we were voted the number one club night in the UK by DJ Magazine, maybe I should step back a second. So Manumission in Manchester was a mixed night. And the idea was because I always felt that a mixed gay straight night had a better atmosphere, and I was told that there's no way the gay crowd will go to a mixed night. And I said I didn't believe them. So I drew this poster, this flyer, and on it there's a guy, and it looks like a kind of ordinary guy, and it says John Wayne security guard. It said, last week I went to Manumission, and I've discovered that men give better blowjobs. Now I've left the wife and kids and live with my boyfriend, Tom. And then underneath it said, health warning, Manumission could seriously damage your reputation as an insecure heterosexual male. And I printed that up, and I fly posted it all over Manchester, especially around the gay village. Well, I'll tell you, when we opened, all the gays came. It was like, and it kind of set the tone for I think, all right, so but the same thing, that the kind of that reputation kept away the more violent straight crowd.
Mm-hmm.
So once we were the number one club in the UK, that changed. Then people would come in saying, more of a violent element to try to get into the club.
Mm-hmm.
So normally their own homophobia would keep them away, but then that changed. So after about 4 more weeks, somebody came in with a knife. He was thrown out, and then he kicked the door down, poured petrol down the stairs, and it was not a nice incident. And we just said, okay, that's the last Manumission in Manchester.
Mm-hmm.
And then how Ibiza came about was basically a holiday. It was like I wanted to go to Morocco,
mm-hmm.
and then we were told that Ibiza would be maybe a good place to go.
Mm-hmm.
And but we had no plans of going to any clubs at all, because we'd just come through like 16 weeks of Manchester, and we paid extra to stay in San Antonio around the bay because we were told that was the place to be.
Mm-hmm.
But after a week there, I'd found got a free invitation to Pasha's birthday party. So we thought, well, why don't we go to that? And went on. That was quite nice. And then I managed to go to Coup, and I was like, well, that the opening Coup, and that was spectacular. I was like, this is a club. It's enormous, and it has a swimming pool in it. And it's got trees growing in it.
Mm-hmm.
Then I said to my brother, imagine we could stay here and do Manumission here. So then we got someone to fax the clubs to say that we were, we're the guys doing the throwing the number one club night in the UK, and we're here and looking to have a residency for Manumission in Ibiza.
Mm-hmm.
And we got meetings with all the various clubs. Space said no. Pasha offered us once a month.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't go to Amnesia, and Coup said we could do every week. So we chose to do the Monday night. And
but it was just in the side.
we didn't have the whole club. The Coco Loco was the kind of gay heart of the club.
Mm-hmm.
So, and because we'd been doing the mixed night in Manchester, we spoke with Brasilio, the art director of the club, and we said we'd do Manumission in this little area. I mean, this story goes on and on and on and on.
Basically, it was so successful that it spilled out over the whole venue. Within on the opening, it was hugely successful, and then it just kept on growing.
Mm-hmm. I mean, what a lot of people don't know is that, we went on holiday. We were offered the Monday night, and we were asked to design a poster. And I looked around at all the posters on the island. In Manchester, we couldn't afford like color printing or anything. Like our posters, I made them on a photocopier.
Mm-hmm.
So I would, I'd resize and zoom up, and I'd make a kind of collage poster with drawings and text and stuff, and then re-photocopy it and then print it out big, and that would be the fly posters. Printed out small, that would be the flyers.
Mm-hmm.
And I made rubber stamps of the designs too, that could be rubber stamped onto cardboard, which we cut squares of card. So it was all handmade, and it was a lot of effort, but not expensive. Well, when we got there, and then they said, you need to make a poster, I looked around, and there was these really, really awful, badly designed color posters that would have been so expensive. I couldn't believe it. But one thing I knew is if I ever had the chance to do color posters, we would do them much, much better than that.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to the printing place to go and design the poster. And when I walked in there were these stacks of posters wrapped in brown packaging paper. And I'm like, I want to print on that. And they said, well, no, nobody prints on that. And I said, but that, I want to print on that brown packaging paper, just Manumission is coming.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, they let me do it. And in amongst all these gaudy, colourful posters were these very nice, simple brown packaging paper ones with Manumission's coming and the Coup logo below. And it got everybody talking, because people were like, well, what is Manumission? And then, all right, no, I've missed a bit. Sorry. We designed, the posters didn't go up.
But I think you've kind of covered it probably enough, no?
Probably, maybe. Yeah, it's a very long story. It'll be the longest podcast you've ever done.
No, I mean, that real point of difference, like you say, if you're making that differentiation between what else was already out there. I mean, Manumission is, it's a kind of, I can't think of a different word right now, but it's a dirty word, like as a brand, as a clubbing brand at that stage, like say, you were number one club night in the UK in DJ Magazine, and then you were, going out to Ibiza. There was no other real kind of other UK brands doing that at that point. I don't think, were there? Was there like maybe Up Your Ronson or something?
No, there was nobody. I mean, there was Black and White was still there. Well, no, I think they'd kind of split. They were like Tommy Mac and his partner Alan had been kind of ruling the roost with Black and White, but they'd split. Tommy was in Coup and Alan was in Pasha. And they, I think since the 88 time, they'd have a night in, one in Esparadis, one in Coup, one in Pasha. They was always advertised with like top London DJs, but they didn't have any names. So that was the kind of thing. So when we arrived, like when I first arrived to Ibiza, once I got out of San Antonio and went to Ibiza town, and I was like, wow, like it was this beautiful kind of, not even medieval, like stone-walled city, not city, but like, like town, and all these really, really cosmopolitan people. They had, all the cool French, Italians, Spanish, the gay scene was incredible. They were like, it was just.
This is, because it wasn't under like the press, like it was like kind of off the radar, so it was really free.
Yeah,
it was that it was like this private, like not private, but this sanctuary where people could escape to. And
it reminded me of being from a village, I liked it when I was in New York or London or Paris, because there were these different people that thought like I did, like, and had, certainly in New York, you could be anything you wanted to be, and if you said, I'm going to be a film director, people would say, great, I know somebody can help you. Whereas if you said it in England, generally they would say, God, you're never going to be a film director. That's the kind of before. So like what I liked about Ibiza reminded me of those cities, but it was on an island in the middle of the Mediterranean. I was like, wow, this would be, I could live here.
Yeah.
And it certainly wasn't a populous, not for the British at that time. It was like, I think in 88, 89, it'd been, like in the news and fashionable. There were a few kind of straggling around that stayed, but it was not on the hip list. It was, but that made it perfect, because it was like all these other cultures and the mix of people. And like Claire says, you're totally free to do really whatever you wanted. Nobody was watching you.
Yeah. And so take us through the first Manumission party at Coup in Ibiza. What was the planning for that? What was the mission statement in terms of what you wanted to create, and who were you trying to draw in, and what did you want to achieve, and how successful was it in terms of those initial ones in Coco Loco?
So what happened, the funny thing was, so we went back to Manchester after the holiday, and we'd kind of expected the posters to be put up, and I kept calling, Nick at the Rock Bar and places to say, the posters up? And there wasn't a single Manumission poster up. And I'm like, this is terrible. And
what you learn in Ibiza is you have to do everything yourself.
Yeah,
you cannot rely on anybody, the clubs at all, to give you any support.
No,
you literally have to do everything yourself.
Which, like Claire and I did together for years. Like we
designed everything. We put posters up. We get flyers out. We did the guest list. We did the shows. We did the after parties, everything.
So what happened was, one of us, me or my brother, had to go back to Ibiza. I didn't really want to at the time, because I was quite happy in Manchester. But I'm more sociable than him. So it was decided that I ought to go back rather than him. So I went back.
Well, it's not Andy's world. Andy was.
Oh no, he was. Yeah.
It was not his scene or his world. It was.
Yeah, Andy was more like a computer programmer type. When that wasn't cool to be that, And so I went back. I spent a couple of days in a little hostel, and then I was invited to stay with one of the artists, the performers from Pasha, said I could stay in his flat. And so I lived there with him and two drag queens. And basically, I was there for 6 weeks and putting up posters everywhere and inviting everybody. So it was like...
I'm just saying to you.
Okay.
I don't know how much you're supposed to say or not say.
All right, yeah. So I think I'm walking into book territory here. So some of this you have to read in the book.
Yeah, of course. In terms of you're kind of setting up that party, and like you've already mentioned as well, that it grew and grew and grew. brought in all of these different elements. How did you get involved with it, Claire, and at what stage did you meet Mike and, start working together and getting together? How did that happen?
Where I came into it was I'd been living in San Antonio in this squat, and I'd gone down to see Javi for Mambo every single day for I think 2 weeks, and he said he'd never met anybody so persistent in his life, and eventually he agreed to give me a job. I mean, I'd worked for every single, the worst of the worst bars and small dingy hives in San Antonio. And eventually I persuaded him to give me this job. Mm-hmm. So Javi gave me this job as I had to stand on the road going down to Cafe Del Mar and tell people to go to Mambo's. So I would do that every night, and I just, and it was great. And then a friend of mine that I lived with was a flyer for Manumission. I actually went to Manumission on my
20th.
Was it? No, it was my.
I think it's your 20th birthday, because we met when we were.
Okay, yeah, I went on my 20th birthday.
Mm-hmm.
I think that must have been the opening.
All right.
I think that was the opening or the second one.
Right.
It was right on that.
Yeah, because it didn't open till late July that first year.
Mm-hmm.
Because.
So I must have gone to the second one. And then a friend of mine, we got broken into, the spot got broken into, and it really upset him. So he left and he went back to the UK, and he said to me, "Do you want to take over my flyering job?"
Mm-hmm.
So I asked Javi if it was okay if I flied for Manumission at the same time, and he said, "Yeah, anything's fine as long as it's got nothing to do with Cafe Del Mar," because they were like enemies. And Jose ended up being a really good friend of ours.
Mm-hmm.
But one night, my friend was one of my best friends, Alice. She was actually flying for
Cafe Del Mar.
For Jose's night in Pasha. He used to do moon dance.
Mm-hmm.
So she had her moon dance flyers, and she went off to do a wee on this this building site, and handed me her flyers,
mm-hmm.
just as Javier and Jose kind of turned up at the same time. So I'm there with my Manumission flyers and my Pasha flyers, and there was this huge kind of fight where they was threatening each other to kneecap each other. It was just and I've got this terrible thing that when I get nervous, I start laughing. So instead of explaining what the situation actually was, my friend's over there doing this endless pee that's trickling down the hill towards us. And I just find this whole thing ridiculously funny. So I've got the two of them shouting at each other, and I'm just giggling away. Anyway, so I became this. I took over his Manumission flyering position.
So how it worked with Manumission was we couldn't afford to pay anybody to do flyering. So the other people would pay. You get paid, I don't know, 20 quid to fly the beaches. Well, we didn't have 20 quid
mm-hmm.
to pay anybody. So we worked out a system where you'd get a commission, I think, and it scaled up.
It was 100 pesetas per fly, or 200 pesetas.
For anybody that went in using your flyer, you'd get paid 100 pesetas.
And it's
like a pound or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then it went up and up. So the more people you got in, the higher pay scale you were on.
Mm-hmm.
And I just found it so easy.
Well, it meant we could have an army of flyers. So rather than just paying 2 girls, we could have 100 people flyering. Mm-hmm. So it was and this is back before you had to have. I mean, I did get arrested and put in prison one night, but this is back before you had to have permits and stuff like that. Yeah.
It was a bit more like the Wild West out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I literally found it. I mean, I've been going to clubs all my life since I was 13. So all over England. So talking to people from, I just found it so easy.
Mm.
And I agreed to meet most of the boys in the club. And it was so big that most of them, they never found me. But yeah, and it was just, people loved it, it's
so from our side, what happens, we're there counting these flies that come in,
mm-hmm.
And trying to work out what to pay each of the people that who's got them. And there are loads of these flyers coming with a little love heart as a symbol, because everybody had a symbol.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got to congratulate the love heart person, because this person's making us a fortune and getting loads and loads of people lists. Mm-hmm. Anyway, the love heart person who we went to meet happened to be Claire.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
So yeah.
That was how the romance kind of then it began.
Yeah.
Brilliant, excellent. That's fantastic to hear. And then, you know, the whole Manumission vibe and everything that went on in that club, you know, you were famous for. It wasn't necessarily always about the DJ. It was about the experience, and you had a whole troupe of performers and, you know, performance artists and all these people kind of taking part in the collective experience of the club. How did you go about recruiting, not necessarily, you know, aside from the DJs who, you know, can promote themselves in a clubbing sense, how were you recruiting these performers and artists, and where were you finding them? How did that work behind the scenes?
I mean, I can tell you the early ones. The very first year, I would get people off the streets. So like, there'd be a human statue, right? You're coming to work. You just stand as a human statue. There was escape artists, right? We'll have you too. You could do a show in the middle. And then there were things that were like just, it was to try to, it all goes back down to, you know, the thing like I told you about the door, like making the vibrate. Mm-hmm. It was like giving people things that would cause them to talk to the person next to them. So you'd be handed a potato by somebody, or like just odd things would happen mm-hmm. that didn't necessarily cost much money. I mean, the first year in Ibiza, we would go to, again, not a lot of budget. There was a scrapyard next to the club, down the old dusty Camino, and I'd go there and I would rent scrap from them. Like, I
mean, we would go there every week on a Monday. We'd go. And
yeah,
we would. Yeah.
And the guy there, he had a set of like gymnastic rings set up. So me and the guy would do stuff on the rings.
And this place really stunk. It was like, it was terrible. It was like
but he was super strong, wasn't he?
Yeah, no, he was amazing.
He was a really good guy. But he was down there in the dirt, the dust, and So I'd rent old washing machines,
rent toilets,
you name it, and we would just make these little staged areas.
Well, and you have to remember that all the decor people at the club at that time were the drag queens. By mm-hmm. night, they were the amazing, fierce Spanish drag queens, and by day, they're all artists. So by day, they would do the club decorations. So they'd make, you know, glitter signs and all this, like, you know, stuff with fabrics, and then we would come in with toilets and broken sinks and smashed up TVs and stuff, and
we'd put them around. I mean, of course, it's probably very dangerous, like, you know, but we'd make these like a living room in the middle of the club. So mm-hmm. And then what would happen? You'd get some sort of eat-up raver would just be sitting on the TV on the sofa watching the TV, and it looked kind of surreal.
Mm-hmm. I think it's kind of very much like surrealism. I was reading one of our big books on surrealism the other day, and it really is, you know, it's much more raw. But if you look at the surrealist art, that's very much what it was, putting strange things together.
Yeah,
you know, things out of context, and just people loved it. Obviously, when they're on drugs as well, or they're drunk, and they're in this massive environment,
and then they're in a kitchen, right?
And they're suddenly in the kitchen. They just have so much fun. And part of our thing was always as well to take people back to the child inside them, mm-hmm. and that would really come out as in Carry On. That's by, you know, the time we'd done the beach, the street parade, the motel, Manumission, then we would take everyone onto a space to Carry On. And at 12 o'clock midday on a Tuesday, I would come out with I would have like £1,000 worth of toys and costumes and stuff like that. And you literally it was only like the last men standing. So anybody who was there they were like putty then. You could do whatever you wanted with them. So you'd have.
And it was all the cool crowd. So these are like your coolest scene in London.
Mm-hmm. You know, the hippest DJs or Primal Screen.
Who wouldn't be seen dead normally wearing a funny wig or a whatever.
I have them like dressed like an Egyptian, or, you know, just looking really, really ridiculous, or Carl Cox in a Tina Turner wig, you know. You could just do whatever you wanted, and everybody had a fantastic time. Yeah, that's kind of Carry On was hilarious for that, wasn't it?
Yeah, like you say, like that journey to get to that point, these people that have been on this experience with you that whole way, when they get to that point at the end, they're in the palm of your hand.
Yes, And then also we would travel a lot. We lived in New York.
Were you talking about the performers?
Yeah. I won't tell you too much about it because it's a big part of the story, because the motel, literally it was me, Mike, and the 5 strippers from New York, and there was Otter from New Orleans, and DJ Jerome, and they were like this kind of crew, this family that we kind of gathered. A lot of them were from New York, and we used to hang out in clubs like Juicy and Jackie 60s, and so we really brought that New York kind of very laid back, very open sexually. That vibe, it was it connected with the Ibiza gay scene perfectly. They were, it was very that molded really well together, didn't it? Yeah. And then then for us it was like the fact that the performers were very close,
like our family.
And some performers stayed with us for like years and years. And I suppose that's the core. The DJs would come and go, but they would be part of the family too, and they would be expected to come on a 36-hour mission with us, and if they didn't join in, they weren't invited back. And they loved it. You'd have John Carter walking around the street parade with a toilet seat over his head. It's just like they didn't normally get involved in that way, and it just made something special.
We had Carl Cox DJing in a toga. We said it was a bring your own bedsheet toga party for the Manumission the movie. It was Lawrence of Arabia was the icon of the. So we told Carl that everybody's going to be. We had visions of everybody liberating their bed sheets from their hotel rooms and putting them on and coming to the party. Well, the only person who came in a toga was Carl Cox, and he was in that toga for about 36 hours. It was like he
was still wearing it when I had a disco dance off with him on the terrace with his Tina Turner wig.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. I mean, did he turn up and think that he's the only person that's been told to wear a toga and you were putting it on him, did you think? Or
I don't know. We never got to discuss that part.
No, but Carl says it was his best ever Ibiza memory. That was his 35th birthday.
Wow.
Yeah, so
it went on for 5 days, and
toga probably helped.
I think, he seems very happy with it.
Excellent. I mean, you mentioned the motel as well, and I don't want to spoil what's in the book because the book that you've written as well. It's the memoir, the motel. High times in Ibiza in the 90s, and obviously that takes in the behind the scenes of the Manumission Motel. And I don't want to spoil what's in there, but can you tell us about how the motel became a thing? Obviously you've got this huge club night on the island, and then to start up this motel in an abandoned brothel with water beds and all of these things and these stories and everything that was ended up being attached to that. How did that, what can you tell me about how that came about? Was it just an opportunity and you were like, let's go for it, or was it in the thinking of this is what we want to do?
It was an obsession, really. I mean, Manumission was an obsession itself, and everything we did kind of was for Manumission. We were on this massive
mission,
and and we were just money for us was fuel for Manumission.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever money we had, we poured back into it in a way that we instinctively felt it needed. So we didn't ask permission from our business partners or anything like that. We were just like, okay, we're going here and we're doing this, and if they said, well, you're crazy, that's going to cost too much money, that doesn't make business sense, we would just do it ourselves anyway. So the year before the motel, we shot Manumission the movie, where Mike and I flew in 14 different film crews to cover a 24-hour period of. I
mean, we did that. That's quite.
We won't go into it too much because it's. You can.
No. Well, just to say that it's like we didn't just film 24 hours. Manumission. We filmed every single. We had 14 parties that summer.
We're very conceptual.
So we filmed every single week with a different film director, but in a different style.
And each of them had 1 hour, 42 minutes, 51.5 seconds of Manumission to capture.
And then they added all up together and it would
make 24 hours. But of course, they couldn't resist filming everything. So then we had like hundreds of hours of footage.
Which we still do,
which is fantastic. But it meant that we flew out this editor from London and an Avid from Madrid, and
both of which cost £1,000 a week. The Avid cost £1,000 a week, The house we rented for him was I don't know how much that was.
Let alone the
hashish
he smoked.
Yeah.
So basically, by the time it's come to, I know I'm digressing, but
no, by the time it come to, you have digressed.
I'm totally digressed. So anyway, skip forward.
What I think Claire's saying is that that we would use all our money to make the Manumission for everybody to enjoy the next year, and the next summer. So and each year had to feel completely fresh. So we had new concepts.
Yeah, see, it was our job.
Get to the point where we were excited to go. So when we knew that when we were excited to see it, that it would work.
Because and also we had to we wanted the island there, so we had to keep it. It had to have it had to be Manumission, but it had to be fresh again every year. So it was like a reinvention, so they could fall in love with it all over again.
And we knew that once we were dying to go to it because it was going to be so exciting.
Then everybody else.
Then we'd be able to tell everybody, and they would love it, and they'd want to come, and that worked for 14 years in a row. And
so after we shot this movie, the next year we decided we'd set our sights on this motel. So we were huge. We loved Americana. We lived in New York in the winters, and there was this one. The only slice of Americana on the island was this pink roadside motel, and we drove past it.
It just looked like something out of a Tarantino movie for us. So we were like, we have to have it, but we didn't have any money left.
But we thought, money wasn't really a thing for us. We just assumed we could have all these things that we needed, and we were so driven that we did find a way, to get these things, often probably in methods that seem absolutely insane and are probably quite dangerous. But we just, nothing was too much for us at then, was it?
No, because it was like Manumission needed the motel, so we had to have the motel. We had to find a way of having the motel. This is the bit you'll find that every stage of getting the motel was impossible. We didn't have the money. We couldn't. The guy wouldn't sell it to us. We thought we could buy it. We still didn't have money at all, but we thought we could buy it.
Anyway, he was selling it already to a German. He was
selling it to a German pimp for 200 million pesetas. We couldn't have it. I told him everything we've wanted the last 4 years.
But even apart from that, we even though he said we couldn't have his motel, we flew off to London and we shot the whole campaign, Murder at the Manumission Motel. We were just so determined we were going to have it.
We knew we were going to get it. And then the phone call comes through saying, anyway, I won't say too much for them, spoil the book. But
the idea behind it was the Manumission had become so big, and we felt like we wanted to give something back to the island and create a small,
intimate hangout.
Yeah. And so we also set off and invited the whole kind of the industry to come and stay with us, and all the strippers and all the
I mean, they were all flying in, and we still didn't.
It was cast like a movie, though.
It was cast like a movie, but they were all flying in, and we didn't even have it at this point. So the New Yorkers were flying in. Carl Cox was going to be staying there on the opening night, and we still didn't have it. Didn't have the money, but the book tells you, or will tell you all about that stuff. It's quite, now reliving it while writing the book has been. It does seem crazy.
I mean, give us a teaser in terms of some of the people that went through the doors, and and how difficult it was in terms of keeping those things behind those closed doors. I mean, I assume these days that something like this couldn't ever exist just purely for the fact that everyone's got something that can record audio, video, whatever in their pockets. How structured was it in terms of giving that reassurance to whoever was there that it was freedom and you could do whatever you wanted to do?
So we had Johnny Golden. Johnny the dwarf was on the door, and Johnny was a really badass doorman. He was like, he was absolutely fearless, and it's very funny. Our friend Vaughan, who was a pasha dancer for years, he had the funky and the rock bar and everything, and Vaughan was staying with us a little while back, and he was telling us this story about the Hells Angels and the godfather of the motel, the guy that we borrowed the money from in the end.
£56,000 we borrowed.
He was a friend of the Hells Angels, as was Vaughan, and they'd all been in Pasha together, and then they'd said to the guys, go down to the motel, you're going to love it, but they hadn't told Johnny. So Johnny's on the door and the Hells Angels arrive, and then Johnny's just telling them point blank, no, you're not coming in. And then by the time Born
what Vaughan says about these Hells Angels, he said these are like dangerous people. They'd ridden from Germany all across with dogs on their petrol tanks, so dangerous dogs, which you're not allowed to do. Nobody dared say a thing to them all the way to Ibiza. And here's this dwarf standing outside the motel saying, "You're not coming in."
And the funny thing is, Vaughan said that the word on the street was that Johnny had like
he had a sawn-off shotgun
behind the door, which of course he didn't.
No.
But it's like nobody can. It's really funny with legend how people justify. People used to say that Manumission was full because we flew everybody in.
Mm-hmm.
They said, "Oh, it's okay for Manumission. They fly everybody in for the Monday, and then they fly them out again. So it's not fair for us because we can't do that. We didn't fly anybody in, you know." And it's like, people make up these backstories and this kind of legend.
So they said that Johnny was this martial arts expert and a really, really well hung porn star or something too. You know,
just to add to the.
So it was like, it's just these funny kind of like.
But he was a really good,
brilliant doorman. Yeah.
Doorman, and he knew, you know, all of our friends. We called them the island. They're the people who lived in Ibiza.
All summer long.
Yeah, and even all year long. Yeah. And press were banned. So, you know, normally if you go to a door and you say, "I'm with this magazine or that," they're like, "Oh, great." And with Johnny, as soon as you said, "I'm with this magazine or that," he was like, "Well, you feck off. You're not coming in." So it was really protected like that, you know. And yeah, like you say, nobody had camera phones or anything like that. So so people felt really relaxed.
Yeah. I mean, look, what we did anyway was even in Manumission or in the motel, we always tried to create a place where you were completely free to do whatever you wanted as long as you didn't hurt anybody else. Mm-hmm. So that was always the vibe. And then if anybody famous ever came to Manumission or to the motel, we'd make sure that nobody would photograph them or, like, you know, as much as we could, or that, you know, because you want them to be free to do whatever they want, you know. So like I remember sitting on the beach with Noel Gallagher, and this is after Manumission Carry On, and we're in Bora Bora by this stage. Same with JK from Jamiroquai. Mm-hmm. And sometimes people try and creep out on camera, and I'd say, "No, don't do that. That's not cool." Because it's like, you want these people to be able to, if you like them being around and having a good time, leave them alone, and they'll carry on coming and enjoying themselves. But as soon as that gets out into the tabloids, it's like, you've spoiled it. Yeah. And so,
it's been a funny thing with the book, because we didn't know how much, you know, it took us years to even commit to writing the book because, well, one, we've got the kids and, you know, and it was kind of wild back then, and now they've all grown up. But, and two, it was like, we didn't know what we should say or what we shouldn't say, you know, and we're very open about ourselves and what happened, because it's actually, you know, we had this idea of living in this motel with all of these DJs and rock and rollers and strippers and stuff and all the drugs and alcohol, and didn't actually take into consideration the effect the environment would have, you know. So we would on everybody, and so we really do explore that in the book, you know. It's because the book is kind of told in real time, waking up in the morning of my.
Tell them about the black spot.
That's why I'm sort of talking about. So it's the book is set over the long weekend of my birthday, and I actually, you know, waking up in that environment 8 weeks in, and just taking a good look around at kind of the chaos we created. And there's a funny thing that during that was the weekend that Lisa Anson went missing and Norma met Zoe and everything. We'd agreed to do one extra party. So with Manumission and Carry On and the motel, we were already really like beyond stretched to capacity. And then we agreed to do this one extra Manumission
on Radio 1.
For Radio 1, and that's just when it kind of broke the elastic, you know. And but there's come like in writing, we've come to this stage. We were like, we literally can't remember what happens next. So
neither of us
at both at slightly different times, we can't remember. They're a huge black spot. And the funny thing is, our in-house photographer, Phil, we did have somebody living in the motel with us. He was the Manumission photographer, and he was as mad, or if not madder than everyone else. And everyone just kind of got used to him. So he was literally always there with his camera stuck to his face. And then there's a stage in the video where his camera goes off too. And we're like, well, what the hell happens now? So then we had to start reaching out to some of the people who were there. And what was like a necessity and like a problem at the beginning
It's become a brilliant thing.
It's become actually something that's really quite brilliant, as well as rekindling loads of relationships. We've had these hilarious stories coming in of just
from all the other people that were at the motel.
From everybody else who was there. So we've got this kind of 360 perspective, and everybody remembers something, different and something personal to them. And because there are a lot of them are artists, it's like poetry, the stories that have come in, and really funny. And so we're going to have a whole section in the book where we open it up to the other players who were there. Yeah, which is really nice.
It's like you say, it sounds like a fantastic format, and like almost on a personal level for you guys to be able to pick up those old friendships and be able to reignite some of that fire that was happening back there in the late 90s. I mean, is there been anything particular that's come back or really surprised you, or been like, wow? I mean, when we've been talking before this interview, and I was aware of it at the time as well, the stuff around Derek DeLarge and what was going on there. I mean, not to ruin anything that's people are going to read in the book, but is that been the most eye-watering thing that you've story that you've had come back? You mentioned.
Well, we're yet to have Derek's.
We're yet to have Derek's. So this is going to be a big one.
But the funny thing is that, like, just for anybody listening, it's quite funny that, like, the mood of how the motel was, and our kind of, let's say, just a dedication to that moment was. So Derek was flown over to play the opening party of the motel. And he was with Wall of Sound. He just made a really hot record called Trick Shot on Ceasefire, and they had big plans for him. Well, Derek came over and knew a good thing. He just didn't go home and asked if he could be the resident.
Well, we all decided that would be a fantastic idea if he moved into the room next door to us. And so then he became El Residente, and he stayed for, I don't know how many. He stayed till the end and a bit more, and then he came back the next summer too. But
I mean, like,
I think we're still waiting for Derek's
multiple stories. We got a great one from Norman Cook.
His is very funny, really good, a real eye opener.
And a great one from Richard Norris from The Grid.
About him and Stuart Price, Jacques Leconte. Which is, I mean, it's for us, it's been almost like an out-of-body experience. And the funny thing is, nobody's actually talked about it. We've never talked about it since it happened. It was such like an impactful time in our lives. We kind of shut it all away.
While we let the children grow up, really.
And we literally did shut it all away. We put it all in a. We've got this huge, like, old cabinet full of all the photographs and the tapes and everything. And we literally didn't get it out until we left the island, and the kids all went back in the summer to visit their friends in Ibiza. And we said, let's get the old tapes out
of the
motel and have a look. And we were thinking, let's have a look and see.
Because we were thinking of writing the book. So
we were thinking of writing the book, or we were thinking of making a film. We weren't sure what we were going to do. So we got the footage out and started playing some of the tapes, and we were like, oh my goodness, we were so shocked. We could watch about 5 minutes, and then we had to put it away, and we were like, oh God. Go for a walk in the garden and then come back and watch a bit more. And we were like, okay, I think we should burn them. Let's just burn them, because this is just awful. It's just too scandalous. And then we were like, okay, let's just put it away and come back to this in a while. We're too shocked at the moment. So then we didn't burn them, thankfully. No. And then a friend of ours, Mark Seyfried, who's a film composer, he used to be Goldie's producer and stuff, and he used to stay at the motel a lot. He came over to try and help us. We've been working on this, like the motel story, for a long time. It's just we weren't sure what format to put it in. So he came over and he watched some of the tapes, but he thought they were absolutely fantastic. And then eventually we just decided, what happened was in the mornings before the kids would wake the kids up for school, we would get up at 5 a.m. and we just started writing random stories.
Yeah, we'd write one memory. We'd say we'd get up and we'd write like 1,000 words in before, like in the 2 hours before we had to take the kids to school. So, and we didn't have any particular order. We would just say, we'd take like memories of the meeting. It was kind of a bit of a therapy for us, is the way we were writing down, and you get them on paper, and it felt good. We did about 80 stories, and they're all good, like in terms of, but we got to the point that the best place to tell this, the wildest time really was the motel. And we imagined if we could tell these stories from the motel, because a lot of them happen, are motel stories as well, aren't they, in there?
Yeah, we just kept getting drawn back to that particular moment in time. You know, everything changed after that that summer. So we kind of just decided to literally set the book right there, slap bang in the middle of the pinnacle of all the the excess. Because then we changed. You know, we had children as well after in 2000, and so that was a huge change in us personally,
and in Manumission,
and of course in Manumission.
Manumission always reflected what we were thinking. So, like while we were watching
the Rescuers,
like Disney films with the kids, then in Manumission they were giant-sized, like oversized bits of furniture, and like we played with scale and things, and we did Ibiza Myths, which was all about like they have this kind of goblin creatures in Ibiza called barragettes. So we had barragettes and fairies, and all of that went into Manumission too. So it's like, you know, but the motel was the wildest time. All the other times were fun, but the motel was just where it went, you know, like Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. It's kind of wild, sort of. Yeah.
How much for the ape? Yeah, it's I can't wait to read it. It's like you say, it's I'd imagine it being very therapeutic having done that. It's interesting about, you know, the tapes and everything and the footage and stuff. Do you think that there will have to be another 20 years kind of grace period, and then that would be released?
Maybe. We were saying that yesterday, actually. Maybe we'll save the tapes. Yeah,
that could be what's next. I mean, in terms of what's next for you guys, and you know, you've been through this kind of very therapeutic, cathartic look at a very intense period of your lives, and obviously, you know, the kids have grown up, like you said, and I think, you know, what we've seen in the clubbing scene as well, and certainly, you know, I'm speaking from my own experience, is that, you know, I was always going to Ibiza, always going to Manumission, always going to Space, all these places. I've gotten older, I've had kids, but now my kids are a bit older, I'm starting to get back into it again. And I think this is something that we've not really seen before in that kind of a youth culture being kind of dormant for a bit and then kind of re-emerging. And, you know, everyone's kind of adding to that. You know, you guys have released a book, there have been, you know, club nights that have been resurrected and things like that. What do you guys see the future for you guys in terms of either Manumission or just, you know, you as a couple in terms of the clubbing scene?
Well, it's quite interesting because
during lockdown, as well as writing the memoir, we had been designing like a Manumission 2.0 with this amazing team that we've kind of met over the years. It's like Madonna's show directors and choreographers, the Talawega brothers. And another partner is a Ben Popvan, who was one of the top creative producers of Cirque du Soleil, and plus Mark Seyfried, the music composer. Together, we've been designing this whole new experience, and because everybody was grounded in lockdown, like the team,
we were having weekly meetings with Vegas, so it was like
LA and Vegas. Whereas beforehand, everybody wanted to do this new, it's like I don't know how you explain what it is, but we all wanted to do this together, but nobody had time. But because they were grounded and locked down, we actually had, it worked out really well.
We've had practically 2 years to create the new Manumission, basically.
Which is amazing, because you would never have that luxury, you know, and with us as designers, time is the biggest.
Time's the most important.
Time's the most precious resource for us. So we've literally been able to, here in our mountain house, the fantastic thing was, because we were writing the motel, we were living literally back in that amazing time. So for creating the new show, it's running parallel with that time. So it really has that sense of lightness and freedom
I suppose like what you were saying, your kids are growing up, and like your head's in a different space when you're taking your kids to school, and you're like now like ours are, Stan is 21, Tallulah's 19, going to turn 20, and Daisy's 17. Right? They're pretty much there, like in terms of they're young adults.
Yeah.
And and you're kind of right as well about like you do start thinking about like you're talking about the possibilities of what you can do and go out, or so the beauty of the whole. The COVID lockdown thing was terrible for many people and devastating for, in many ways. But the plus point for us was like what Claire says, we were able to work with these great people and to create basically Manumission 2.0 and stop the birds making all that noise. One second.
What have you got there? It sounds like a menagerie.
In this room, there's 2 birds, there's 4 dogs, and there are 3 cats in this room. Yeah.
Yeah, so they've been quite well behaved considering. It's just the birds. When we talk, the birds kind of talk back, so and the more excited we get, the louder they get. So we've been preparing this amazing new show, and we've just actually
experience, really, isn't it?
Yeah, and we've just actually been commissioned to do 6 events in Ibiza this summer.
Also, it's very, very exciting, and it will. And what you're creating will continue the name Manumission, or is it something new?
So we could explain a bit more about the concept, the concept behind the new event. Okay, so 25 light years away, we've discovered, like studying the solar system, that 25 light years away there's this planet.
25 light years away, superior beings are watching a happening on planet Earth, and what they're watching is Manumission 25 years ago. So what they see now is that. Okay.
So what they say, literally, 25 years ago, we were shooting Manumission the movie. So, and the amazing thing is, we have it so well documented because, like we said, we flew in 14 different film directors, so we have like hundreds of hours of footage. So we're looking at Manumission through their eyes, and because they are of a superior intelligence, they don't see things the way that we see them. They see things more,
and they don't judge.
And the most important thing is they're not judgmental. So when they look at Manumission, they see all these souls together on the dance floor, and then you see this happening in the middle of it all. And then what we're going to show is like the experience with like the sensations of the audience, of the like the auras, and so these superior beings are watching it and like, oh, okay, so this, they kind of go around the whole world and they find on this moment in time, this is like, this thing is happening, and they kind of worship this happening, this, because they just see it as love, as harmony. They see all these wars and all this fighting going on, but then they find this little hub of like people raving together and all this like love and stuff going on, and they kind of worship this, and then they create their own Manumission.
But the letters get jumbled. So instead of it being Manumission, it's Animus Omnis, which means all souls. But it's the same letters as Manumission, but they're rearranged. So on their planet, they have Animus Omnis, and everything is rearranged. So the way because they try and make sense of what we do. So then you've got things like the drugs, and then they do their own interpretation of what the drugs are and what they do and the effects they see. So we've kind of done this, I suppose it's an abstract kind of take on Manumission from a sci-fi perspective. So and it's very funny because we for us, things are always, we love like things that make us laugh. So we found a very funny way of looking at all the big things that were important in Manumission, whether it was the effects, the drugs, the music. We've just so we've had a lot of fun diving into the past and then creating this whole and we've created this for Vegas, but it'll be launching in Ibiza this summer. So, and we also work, because we've got so many amazing friends who own venues and stuff around the world, that we're going to place it in, like with our friend Lawrence, who has Egg in London. We're going to hand pick the right places that we think to showcase it. Yeah.
I mean, that sounds incredibly exciting, and welcome back to the fold in terms of putting on like experiences like that. I can't wait to to see more, hear more, and get involved, definitely.
So animus omnis is all souls in
All
Latin.
souls, yes.
Well, manumission was Latin for freedom from slavery.
Yeah.
This is the transfiguration of manumission. This is the next evolution, will be for all souls.
It must have been a lightning strike on your brain when you realised that you could do an anagram of that to create something that fitted out so well. Yeah, it meant to be.
Yeah, well, if you check animus omnis and you see what anagrams, you can only make the word manumission from those letters.
No way.
There's no other word. Of using all the letters, it only makes manumission.
Yeah, it was a good sign.
You like to say, it felt like an epiphany. Yeah. Yeah.
Perfection. Cool. So talking about kind of semi-epiphanies and, talking about, what kind of drew you into the scene and music-wise as well. Let's talk about the playlist. And you guys it's great that you've given these to me up front. And yeah, familiar with all of them. They're all brilliant choices. And these will go into the House Culture Perfect playlist, which you can find by searching for that on Spotify. And, this is
great.
A playlist that every single one of our guests has put 5 tracks based on these themes into. I checked this morning, it was 23 hours long, I think now. So,
oh wow,
it's got
what resource.
It's incredible left field choices, incredible gems, massive anthems, and I'm pleased to say as well that all 5 of your tracks aren't in there already, which is great because sometimes you can get the same ones coming up every now and again, and you don't know whether to say, can you choose another one or just go with it? So all I really want from you guys is just a brief chat around why you've chosen this and why it's meaningful for you in the context of the theme. So in terms of a catalyst, and I know this was your choice, Claire, what a track that kind of originally got you into dance music or opened your ears to something new and cool, and you've chosen
White Lines, the Grandmaster Flash.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the earliest kind of electronic track I remember hearing. I think I must have been when did it come out?
It came out when you were 9 years old, I think.
I was like really young, and I remember the words, and I still remember the words now, and they had like quite a profound effect on me, like the injustice of everything that he was talking about in it. And then obviously the beats, which still sound fantastic now. And it's just quite amazing with our personal story that then years later we'd have Grandmaster Flash DJ for us in Manumission, and I was a huge Madonna fan when I was a kid, and he literally started off by playing 3 Madonna records, and then he had all of us like girls on the bar, and then he went into his like scratching and stuff. But it was just amazing that he had everyone in the palm of his hand with these. Yeah,
he played one Madonna record, then his second song was a Madonna record, then his third song was a Madonna record. And I was starting to think, oh God, is he only going to play Madonna records? and then he came in with something cool and scratchy next. But he had all the girls were dancing on the bar. The whole room was dancing. They had the atmosphere just right. And I thought, there's a great DJ. He knows what he's doing.
And it's funny, like the White Lines is anti kind of drugs, the message. But then, with what happened in the motel, it kind of, that's another strange, very important part of our story. And
people can discover that in the book, I'm sure. Cool. And then the next tune, A Floor Filler, I think this was your choice, Mike. Can you remember?
Yeah, DeLacy, Hideaway. Deep dish mix.
Yeah.
I mean, the funny thing is, when we were doing some research for the motel, we spoke to DJ Jerome about, we've been getting stories from the people and tracks, and so what Jerome said, he said, he gave a couple of tracks. He said, Mike, this one Mike really liked.
Jerome was like one of our friends from New York, and he was the DJ. He was a resident at Jackie 60s and Juicy. And then we brought him over to Ibiza, and he lived in the motel, and he was the motel resident. So we asked him for his stories and his records, and he was like, oh, now this is the one that always gets Mike's what did he say, his head tap,
Mike's head
always foot, I don't know what, this one always gets Mike going, and
we
then
played
it
and of course my head starts going, and I'm like,
Yeah.
And I thought, well, he's absolutely right. That's my track.
Yeah. It's great.
Yeah.
Awesome. And a sunsetter, what have you chosen there?
So obviously, Jose Padilla was a good friend of ours, and we spent many an afternoon with him at Cafe Del Mar, and just watching and listening to. He just could play perfectly, to the last glimmer of sun had disappeared into the horizon. But he did that to the Penguin. I think it was
Penguin Cafe Orchestra.
Yeah, he did that perfectly. So we were going to suggest that one, but then Mike was like, "Ooh."
Well, we used to listen to a lot of Jose's tapes back in the day,
when the DJs used to do their mixtapes. So John Satrinch would do his mixtapes, and Jose, they're all fantastic.
And that was a track that for me, the Paco de Lucia one is just a perfect. I'm in Spain. I'm watching the sunset. I'm not in England anymore. I'm like,
it really does capture
it really
that.
It's so good. And I've heard him play that lots of times. So it's like that's.
And flamenco's always been an important part of Manumission too, with Paco Fernandez. So it just really, it says sunshine and sunset, and
yeah, and it has that change in it as well. It starts off slow, and then it speeds up.
Passion,
Surprisingly, for me anyway, for hearing it, very upbeat tearjerker. What's the story behind that?
Well, I mean,
there are loads of songs that are like.
So Mike's a huge fan of opera too. So we've been kind of debating over this part of the podcast for 2 days, and they're like having a bit of a rave in the kitchen. But Mike, loves opera, so we thought it might be a piece of opera. So
but none of them made a tear come.
None of them. The ones that we thought were the saddest pieces of music, they just didn't really make us. They didn't jerk any tears. And then, I mean, Nina Simone is just.
I thought last night. I said I know which one, and I put that on last night. And
I mean, for me, Nina Simone, everything she does is so. It's so kind of raw, and from her like guttural, and from her everything's got an element of pain, but she always sees something beautiful in that. And then it was the lights.
Well, when you go through it, when it gets to I've got my hat, it's got hope, that song, and it's the hope that brings the tear. So we both looked at each other, and I had the tear, Claire had the tear.
So,
we're like, okay, this is the song.
Yeah.
And
it was the positive, the light at the end that
you might not have anything, but you've got your hands, you've got your fingers, you've got your eye, the bits you do have when you have nothing. That's you can build your way out from those things.
Yeah.
That's
what got us.
That's what got us.
Amazing. That's a great perspective on it as well. I don't think anyone else on the podcast previously has kind of approached that one in that way. It's a real fresh take on it, which is great. Okay, a last tune, probably one of the greatest intros.
Debate over this one, because obviously we've had so many parties that we've never ever wanted to end, and we were always like cajoling the DJs, making them play one more record. Usually more
than one more record.
Yeah.
It was going to be either Love Is in the Air, which is always a great, moment.
I think Norman Cook has already chosen that one. When we interviewed him, that was his last tune, I think.
Oh really?
Yeah. There you go.
But the funny thing is, I was saying to Mike, it's good for the end, but it always reminds me of Satrincha, because whenever we used to arrive at Satrincha we used to arrive on a Monday in 2001 with a good ship Manumission. We literally used to sail in. And
an old sailing ship.
And every time we came in, John Satrincha would play that
Love Is in the Air.
And Norman was there too.
Of course.
Norman used to come and greet us when he was on the island. He used to come and greet the good ship. So then for me, Love's in the Air didn't perfectly represent that final moment.
Whereas Let's Dance does.
Yeah, kind of.
It's a great song. It's
and it kind of says everything.
Yeah,
I mean David Bowie. I went to see Chic and Nile Rodgers, and obviously worked with David Bowie on writing that song. It's incredible, and he did do the story beforehand in that when he was in the studio with David, and they were writing that song. And Nile Rodgers turned to David Bowie and said, "Oh, do you think we've made it too funky?" And David Bowie just said, Is there such a thing? Brilliant response.
That's great.
Cool.
It's
Well,
beautiful.
yeah, thank you so much. I've just got one final question before we wrap it up, which is, based on the scene and the culture. I mean, we are house culture, and we love digging into all of the different elements of the scene, and you guys are a massive part of the foundation of what's been created in terms of parties, Ibiza, and your contribution to the culture and the scene has been huge and not to be underestimated at all. I mean, and you've had this period of reflection during lockdown and writing a memoir as well. When you look back and take stock on where you are right now and what you've achieved, what does it mean to you to have had that impact on the scene, and how do you assess it and square it all in your head?
It's very interesting because of writing the book and rekindling these friendships, and also because the book's being crowdfunded. So sometimes we hide away a little bit, and it's actually forced us to go out there and talk to everybody, and actually the feedback and the wave of love that we've received from putting this book out, has
been amazing. It's been amazing. It's like people are really enjoying taking their minds back there and remembering, because it was so special, and life has caught up and is what it is, and it's almost like a distant dream, but for us revisiting it, writing it, has taken us back there. So we're very there, and then talking to our friends and them remembering, and
the wider community of of people who came or didn't come and wish they'd come, who are now kind of experiencing it through this kind of wave of emotion and stuff. It's been amazing, and it has kind of reminded us of how special it was. And
because the thing, when you're a parent, we've had a whole bunch of time not doing this, and it seemed like a distant life in a way to us, to the parent.
Totally, yeah.
And how do we feel? We're very happy that we did what we did. Lovely,
amazing.
Matt. Yeah. It's been great to chat. Have a great day.
Cheers,
Bye.
Matt. Bye.
House culture.
Wow. What a way to kick off this new season of the House Culture podcast. I hope you enjoyed that conversation and are as excited as I am for Mike and Claire's triumphant return to Ibiza this summer. We now have some more details on what that will be exactly, as Mike and Claire have since told me how they have teamed up with a super team from Las Vegas, Hollywood, London, Barcelona and Milan to bring you Alien. Picture this. In a blackout in the Manumission Motel, Claire slipped through a portal into a hallucinogenic dream state and encountered a superior being called Alien. 25 years later, that same portal has reopened. Alien has returned with their version of the world's wildest party, and a team of ET cinematographers are on a mission to finish what Mike and Claire started. Stars from the worlds of nightlife, cinema, Cirque du Soleil, fashion and shibari unite under the alias of Animus Omnis. This will bring you a glimpse into the future of a party that you will never forget. The galactic confluence takes place at O Beach, Ibiza on the second Sunday of every month, starting May the 8th and running until October the 9th. The parties will feature a residency from previous House Culture podcast guest Smokin' Joe, who will be playing alongside some of the world's best dance music producers. And of course, secret carry-ons will also be on the launch pad, so keep your scanners open for those. And whilst you're setting that up, don't forget to head over to Spotify, where you can start following the House Culture Perfect playlist. This is where you'll be able to listen to the submissions from all of our previous podcast guests, as well as Mike and Claire's choices too. Now, listening back, I realised that we missed calling out the names of a couple of their choices, with the Sunsetter being the iconic Entre dos Aguas by Paco de Lucia, completely mangled that, and their tearjerker being none other than Nina Simone's Ain't Got No, I Got Life. So search out the House Culture Perfect playlist on Spotify to hear more. then this one's on you, dear listener. Please don't forget to do all of that good stuff for us. Love, like, tweet, share, tell your friends, or leave us a review. We love hearing your feedback, and if you have some nice things to say, we'll give you a shout out on a future episode as well. And then if you don't already, come and join our party over on our Instagram feed at houseculturenet, or by following the hashtag #TrueHouseCulture. Our huge community is a safe space for all kinds of beat lovers from across the globe. So let's help you stay connected to what's happening in the world of house music right now. And finally, if you want to get in touch with me, Matt Rouse, you can do that directly on Instagram at DJ Matt Rouse. Thanks for listening. Rave safe, and see you next time.
House culture.